win. Unbelievable scenes here at the Bull Ring. India, the world champions.
What if that catch had been dropped? What if there was a team of only left-handers? Or what if the rain didn't play spoil sport in a World Cup defining match?
The beauty of cricket lies in the small margins that not only define the result of the game, but also tournaments, legacies, and the entire business of cricket.
Welcome to the River Sweep Show, where we discuss the alternate realities of the cricketing world, hosted by two delusional cricket fans, myself Suyash and my co-host Abhinav.
We have a passion for stats and a vivid imagination. Expect deep analysis garnished with our personal biases and hot takes. Join us as we explore alternate realities and dissect those game-changing moments that could have altered cricket history and narratives forever.
This is the cricket podcast you have been waiting for. Hello and welcome everyone to today's episode of the River Sweep Show. I'm your host Suyash, and joining me is my co-host Abhinav. How is it going, AB?
All good, SS. I'm back from my vacation and I've been enjoying some really good test cricket. Although parts of it were a bit too painful for watch, but at least we are having some really good cricket. How about you?
Yeah, that's what Test cricket is all about. Roller coaster. Each day, each session is so different. The hopes were quite up on yesterday when Sarfaraz and Pant were really going bonkers. But by the end of the day, we all knew that New Zealand would go on to clinch this one, and they kind of deserve it as well. So I was using the evening as a distraction, went with my wife to watch some tennis. But yeah, I mean, it was not in the script. I was predicting a 3-0 before the series started, even though it was quite clear that the Bangalore test will be rain shrouded. But yeah, kudos to New Zealand. What did you think about the performance?
Yeah, before the match started, I was just looking at some statistics. The last time New Zealand actually won a test match in India was 35 years ago, 1989, and that's a long, long time. But then we know that New Zealand always puts up a good squad together. They are very well prepared. They are a gritty group of players. So whenever New Zealand is touring India, or for that matter, wherever we are playing New Zealand, we expect a stiff competition. But then, of course, definitely not what happened. Definitely, at least I wasn't expecting 46 all out in the first innings. And after that, I think we were way too behind in the game. We did make a good comeback, but then still, the collapse after Rishabh Pant got out. And by the end of the day yesterday, it was very clear it was a bit too less the target for us.
Yeah, our listeners and viewers do not come to the show to think and moan a bit more about what's happened, but we go into the hypotheticals and what ifs. So let's dive into it. What do we have in store, Ravi, for today's podcast episode?
Yeah, like the last two episodes that we did, we are again picking up a discussion which is very topical. And given the fact that there is a test series was between India and New Zealand going on, so we take up a topic on the same lines. We see what is the best New Zealand Test 11 from the 21st century and see if that could actually give a good competition to India. This particular New Zealand 11 has won a test match at least in India, but then we also go ahead and see whether they can actually win a test series against India in India.
Yeah, I mean, as you were mentioning that 1989 was the last time that New Zealand won a test match. They've come close a couple of times. I think I was also reading 1968 they won, 69, and they were close to winning a series, and then the cloud burst happened in Hyderabad, and they couldn't win the test series. So yeah, so it would be a fun exercise doing this. We have done some research. We would love to share it with our listeners and viewers over here as well. So I think a good starting point for us would be to just talk a bit more about New Zealand cricket in general, how they have fared in India, and what makes them such a compelling sight to watch. What are your thoughts on this?
So the first time since we talked about the last time New Zealand won a test in India, not in our lifetimes, so we weren't.
We're not that old.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the first time I remember New Zealand coming close to winning a test match was probably in '99 in Mohali, where India got bowled out for 83, if I remember correctly, in the first innings. But then again, they came back and came back very strongly. Were able to draw the match. What's your first instance that you remember when New Zealand came close to winning a test in India? And then maybe we go ahead and talk about what makes New Zealand a team that always looks like they come close to winning a test but are not able to win it.
Yeah, but you triggered some deep memory nerves in me. You know, this Mohali Test match back in '99. I remember Dion Nash picking up like 6 or 7 wickets or something. India won the series 1-0, but it's very close to my heart because that was the first time I watched cricket in person. My dad took me to watch one of the days in the Kanpur Test match, the second one. Sachin was batting as well. We got a very nice seat next to the pavilion. I saw Ravi Shastri shook his hands. I was so young then, so there's very special memories. And yeah, it was a good tour from New Zealand. A very young Daniel Vittori was, I think, playing one of his earlier matches. Very boyish charm, 18 years old, spectacled and all that. But yeah, the memory that comes with New Zealand really troubling India in India. I remember one of those instances where India had to bat twice to save the test match. And Mark Richardson, a very gritty opener, made 145. New Zealand made some 650 runs and all. That was, I think, the 2004 series, if I'm not wrong, or something around that time. But India wasn't in a losing position, but that was something of a trouble. And then it was that famous test match in which Harbhajan Singh made a century. And if he hadn't made the century, we would have lost. Chris Martin absolutely dismantled India in second innings. We were 15-5 or something. And if Harbhajan did not score the 100, the game would have been over on the fifth morning or fifth afternoon. Those are the two instances. And this was in 2010, I think, in Ahmedabad. So these are the two instances that I could remember of. But otherwise, India has been able to usually churn out wins, sometimes convincingly, and New Zealand have been just battling for draws. Any special memories from New Zealand-India Test series in your mind over the last couple of times, or is the painful memory of today too much?
Painful memory of today is too much, but we are recording a podcast and we want to go back in time and also relive different kinds of memories. More recently, I remember the last time New Zealand came to India, they were able to draw a match, and that for them was equivalent to a victory because they were in a position where they should have lost the match. It was India's match to win. But then I remember Tom Latham pulled off a really, really good innings against the Indian spinners, and New Zealand was able to draw a match. But then that is what we're talking about, right? New Zealand keeps coming close to drawing a match, but then are, or rather winning a match, but then eventually end up either drawing or losing the test match, right? So what do you think? Why does that happen?
Yeah, I have very macro philosophical thoughts on this topic itself. I mean, New Zealand as a cricketing nation, it's a developed economy, of course, but from a cricketing terms, it's one of those nations that you always feel that when a generation goes away, would they wither away? I always had that feeling in the late 2000s when Vittori was at its final stretch. The Macmillans, the Astles, the Styluses had went away. Fleming had gone, and they had a dearth of good top order batsmen. They were losing a lot of series. In fact, India won a series there as well when Dhoni was the captain. And I felt that they would just wither away and New Zealand would never be a strong side. What we see with Sri Lanka in the last 5 years. But they have really surprised. I think gives a lot of testament to their investment and targeted investment into grassroots, probably domestic cricket as well. They had fantastic batters, Williamson, Taylor, and lot, and good crop of fast bowlers as well. So they have been, I would have never guessed that they would be the first team to win the WTC. If you asked me back in 2010, so they have like a smaller pool, smaller investment, not the kind of riches that the top three boards have. But that also leads to the point that they would be able to punch above their weight, but only to a certain level, like one sigma. If you go into statistics, they will never go beyond that. And I think India is beyond that for them, or has proven to be till this morning, probably.
Mm.
Uh, so yeah. So because they lack some of those principles that we talked about in the first episode when we were doing the unified Pakistan-Bangladesh team in order to succeed in India, they're never able to have all those 4 or 5 principles in their squad covered. And that's why they will always struggle to win a test match. But hey, they just won today. So yeah, that's my macro take on New Zealand in cricketing in general and about why they don't. The TLDR version is simply they do not have the capabilities, and the skill gap is still there with India, so they are never able to consistently win test matches over here.
Yeah, actually, also quite pertinent what you speak about, and something that we touched upon in the first episode of our podcast. What are the principles? What factors does a team need to really win in India? And we spoke in quite a lot of depth about having fast spinners, which New Zealand has not had a lot of. Probably the best spinners that New Zealand has had were Daniel Vettori and now Ajaz Patel, players like these. But then again, they're not fast spinners, and there are very few of those quality spinners that New Zealand has. Then, like, if you have to compete in India, you need to have a batting lineup full of good spin players, which is again something that New Zealand struggles with historically. They might have 1 or 2 players who play well against spin, but not the entire lineup. So as a entire unit, they end up struggling against. And then when it comes to pace bowling, you want flat pitch quicks who can bang the ball in, who can bowl in different conditions, who can reverse the ball. New Zealand, I think, has always had more of a unidimensional kind of bowling attack. Swing bowlers who can swing in conditions where it's supported, but once the ball gets a bit older, when the sky is not overcast, then they struggle in India. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean they have. You will never find a New Zealand team that has been a bad fielding outfit.
True.
But I feel, yeah, catches win matches, but they are able to save runs and do that damage in white ball cricket. In red ball cricket, where their primary skills need to supersede the other teams' primary skills, that's where they somehow lack when they come to India. You mentioned about fast spin, and for our listeners and viewers, when we say fast spin, we are trying to accommodate for the fact that if you bowl slow spin, you might still be successful. You might spin a ball a lot, but the kind of domestic training and Indian batters and young batters have, if you don't bowl medium fast when it comes to relatively talking about spin, Indian batters are always able to use their feet. They are able to use their footwork more clearly in their minds, going back, going front, and are able to maneuver the ball and are able to dominate when they want to. So that's where, as you mentioned, New Zealand have always struggled. They've always had the batting in terms of some batters always there, prepared to sweep a lot, prepared to use their feet, dominate. But in terms of a unit, that's where they have struggled. And in terms of fast bowling, swing has been like the number one characteristic when you think about New Zealand bowling. Of course, there's some seam movement, but swing is what you think of. And when it comes with SG ball, Indian conditions, after 25 overs, 30 overs, it's very difficult. And once you have got ordinary spinners, Indian team or any Asian team for that matter, which has got good metal, will be able to dominate. Even if you look at New Zealand's record in Pakistan and Sri Lanka, when Pakistan and Sri Lanka were really good test teams, they wouldn't have won a lot of test matches.
So, what do you say we have, after having discussed what New Zealand is missing out right now and what they have missed out over the years? What do you say? Should we move into the meat of the discussion today and try and build our New Zealand Test 11 from the 21st century?
Absolutely. It was such a fun exercise to do when I was doing some background research on this, came up with so many names and all. But I think some of our listeners might have not gone through the first episodes. It's always good to mention about how we go about this exercise and what are the constraints around it. So we generally go by the classical 11 approach in terms of openers with some top order, middle order, all-rounders, spinners, and fast bowlers, with a mention of the 12th man, the captain, the wicket keeper, as well as a preferable coach. We will both run through section by section, debate on the inclusions, the exclusions, the logics, the biases, and everything. The constraints over here are just that they need to have played actively played test matches, and most of their career would have been spent in the 21st century. For me, the 21st century begins in the year 2000 and not 2001, but that's a bit of a finicky detail which we can gloss over. So that's there. So not wasting any more time, we would like to jump into the same. And AB, would like you to tell me about your thinking about the openers, what options were you pondering, what statistics swayed you, and who were your picks?
Yeah, I think when it comes to top order, we have some really good quality batters in there when we talk about like over the years, 21st century. Some of the most compelling options for me are Stephen Fleming, Kane Williamson, Brendan McCullum, Devon Conway, Martin Guptill, Tom Latham, Mark Richardson. Personally, I would want Tom Latham to open. The recent years have been one of the most difficult for openers to play in. I mean, it's the bowling era, and Tom Latham has actually been one of the best openers of late across the world right now. So I definitely want him in my team, and he has different gears to bat in, right? When you want him to slow down, see the new ball through, he can do that. You want him to play the spinners, he can do that. So I definitely want Tom Latham in my team. The second opener for me would be Brendan McCullum, who would also be my keeper. The reason I say that is because one, he has opened for New Zealand and done that fairly successfully. Second, he brings out that intent which I want in my team. I want my team to be very aggressive when they are playing against India because if you go on the defensive, then Indian bowlers will be out there to get you and they will get you with that odd good ball. So definitely want Brendan McCullum to be in there. And plus, he also has an average of 50 plus in India in tests. So that counts. Number 3 and 4 for me would be Stephen Fleming and Kane Williamson. Stephen Fleming, although has not had a very good record in India, but then overall in subcontinent he has a very good record. He is a good player of spin, of course, very experienced left-hander. I want him in there in my team at 3. Kane Williamson, it's a no-brainer. He picks himself Fab 4 over the years. Quality batter across formats. Specifically when it comes to tests in India, he can also play spin and seam equally well. So I definitely want him in my team. What about you? Who are your?
It's interesting that you mentioned about Williamson and Fleming alongside your opening discussion because those are the two guys I was also thinking can they slot as openers as well, for example. So that's very clear from you that you want to keep them at their traditional positions where they have really succeeded. For me, interestingly, this was a difficult discussion internally in my head because there were so many options and I was trying to think out of the box. Mentioned about Williamson and Fleming, but for me, it was also about deciding on how I approach my team and how I would want this team to play. Whether I would want to have one intent opener like you went with McCullum. I was looking at different options. I looked at a lot of statistics as well. Tom Latham is my first opener. For me, it was that he has an average of around 39, played 83 test matches, fairly experienced left-hander, plays spin very well, can sweep, which is a big component about how New Zealand would want to approach batting against spin in India. And is a level-headed guy, plays seam as well. So Latham picks for me as my first opener. For the second opener, I looked at Guptill as well because that was without looking at any statistics. I would have thought that he would have a better record, but he has a terrible record in India and overall as well. He's a mediocre test opener, putting it mildly. He's a brilliant servant for New Zealand cricket if you look from a white ball perspective, but not red ball. So he was out. I looked at McCullum. I also looked at a certain Nathan Astle, who I have a soft corner for. I really liked him as a cricketer in my formative years. So I was thinking, can Astle open? He used to open in one-day cricket. But I decided to look for at least some experience as opener and especially for some experience as opening in India. And I looked at a forgotten man who I've already given a shout out, Mark Richardson. People now mostly would remember him as a commentator whenever India tours New Zealand. But he has a very good record in India. I mean, his overall test average is is around 45 because he debuted very late in his career. Like Chris Rogers of Australia, he debuted like 33 or 34 years of age, played only 38 test matches. But against India, he has an average in mid 50s or something, and he made that 145, in which is a very funny video on YouTube, which everyone should watch, is when he's trying to sweep Indian spinners and he has got cramps, so he falls off each time, and Indian players are all laughing around him, but he's being very effective. He made 145. That is still, I think, his highest score. And he's a very gritty opener, so he will bat a lot. He might score only 60 runs of 200 balls, very Akash Chopra-esque in the mold, but I want him. So I decided to go with a very conservative approach as my opener because I want that opening spell to be out. And if Ashwin comes on early, Jadeja comes on early, he's able to tackle. So for me, the openers are Latham and Mark Richardson. And then 3 and 4 are Williamson and Fleming. I play Williamson at 3, natural position for him. Can play all around the world. I think he scored a century against India in his debut series. And Fleming has an excellent record. I remember him scoring a 270 something not out versus Sri Lanka against Muralidharan. So he doesn't have a good record versus India in India, but just on the basis of experience, calmness, he's my number 4, and he's also my captain for that matter as well. All the CSK experience, of all the Indian conditions experience he has garnered over time, if he was playing today, he would have been my captain. So that's my 3 and 4.
That's quite interesting. You went ahead with Mark Richardson. So you really are very about the Indian seamers and want to see them through.
Yeah, and I saw him enough bat against. He was very frustrating when New Zealand scored some 650 in that test match in 2004. He was very frustrating to watch. And that's the frustration I would want to dish it out if I was making a team of New Zealand in 21st century. So yeah, it was a tough call, but went with Richardson. Very happy with that selection. Very dogged opening partnership I have, Latham and Richardson.
Yeah, I mean, if I have to compare that with some contemporary batters, then Dean Elgar.
No. This is like Crawley and Duckett in reverse for me. But all right, since you mentioned about some middle order names already, Astle, and you went with McCullum as an opener, what was your thought process about shooting the middle order 5 and 6 and 7 maybe as well? All rounders already being picked as middle order batsmen. Tell us.
Yeah, so a lot of players actually, and since we're talking about the entire 21st century New Zealand teams, also we definitely have a lot of players to pick up from. I'll just start off with the entire list of players and then go into my selection. We have Hamish Rutherford, Henry Nichols, Colin Munro, Craig McMillan, Nathan Astle, we spoke about him, Ross Taylor, who has been such a wonderful batter for New Zealand over the years.
Absolutely.
BJ Watling, wicketkeeper batter, Tom Blundell, wicketkeeper batter, Luke Cronchi, again a wicketkeeper batter. Now, out of these, I have picked up only one, which is Nathan Astle at number 5. For me personally, it was between Nathan Astle and Ross Taylor, but Ross Taylor misses out because of his terrible record in India, an average of 21 in 10 matches. So I definitely don't want to pick him because probably he's not the best player for Indian conditions. Nathan Astle, on the other side, has an average of over 50 in 5 matches. So he seems to be a much better pick for Indian conditions. Plus, he can also give me a few overs with the ball. So he's my number 5. Then I go into the zone of all-rounders. When it comes to all-rounders, again, I have a lot of options to pick up from. Chris Gaines, Jacob Oram, Dan Vettori, Mitch Santner, Colin de Grandhomme, James Neesham, Scott Styris, Grant Elliott, Rachin Ravindra. Out of these, for number 6, I pick up Rachin Ravindra. And the reason is like it's recency bias also, you can say, but then also picking up based on potential. He has not played a lot yet, but I'm sure he'll play a lot in the future. He definitely has that potential. Even when watching him bat in this test match, he was one of the most secure when it comes to his decision making, his footwork against spin. So I definitely want him in my team. He seems to be a unicorn, and I don't want to miss out on him. So that is my 5 and 6. We'll come to the rest of the all-rounders later. First, I want to give it back to you for your 5 and 6 middle order selection.
Yeah, I think this was also very interesting because of the plethora of options available to us. I actually match with you on number 5. I also went with Astle because I already thought that he's a quality player. I really liked him growing up. You mentioned about his very good record in India, actually. He's got average of around 43 versus India and mid 50s in India when he has come to India. He came only on one tour, but he made like runs in each of the test matches, like 50 plus in all of them. And it would have been great if he would have played a tour or more here in the 2000s. But I think he still picks it up, not only on his record, but also because of all the intent he provided. Very modern batsman, like a pre-Sehwag. He could have opened. That is why I was thinking about him. I remember that fabulous double hundred when New Zealand was chasing 550 versus England. That was the fastest double hundred.
at that time.
Yeah, so he could really crack it. Fearless cricketer. He also has 50 test wickets as well. So Astle for me at 5. 6 is Brendan McCullum for me. You already picked him as your opener, but for me, I think it's a triple century versus India as well. But I think he's one of those guys you want him in the team. Very modern batsman, can be a real thorn in the eyes of the opposition. Can also be a wicket keeper, leadership material as well. Can counter attack basically, and you need counter attack sometimes when if you are struggling in the second innings versus India, for example. So for me, Astle and McCullum. I was close to thinking about Macmillan, but Macmillan hasn't played a lot of test matches in 2000s. Looking at some other options as well, but Ross Taylor was like the biggest miss. But I was also happily surprised that you also did not go with him, just not because of the name, but also we looked at statistics and he just doesn't have a good record. He has a decent record in Sri Lanka. I think he averages like mid 40s, but against India, in Asia, in totality, given the amount of runs he has scored and given how high he is held in New Zealand's and New Zealand fans' eyes, he just doesn't have the numbers to show. So we both decided to go without Ross Taylor, and I think that's the correct decision.
But I like the selection. You have a full intent-packed middle order.
Yeah, I didn't go with an intent top order, but I have like Astle, McCullum, and you will be really surprised with who's my number 7, and that's Mr. Intent as well. So yeah, I went with it. Very happy with my selection. I get some overs from Astle as well, and I get all the intent in the world from McCullum. So I think Indian spinners, and when the second new ball comes at 80th over, it will fly. Yeah, okay.
Who's your number 7 SS? Maybe I'll give it to you since you have.
Yeah, that's like a bingo card bogey pick or something. I was looking at some players. I thought of Rachin Ravindra because I could do McCullum at 7 and play Rachin Ravindra at 6. He has shown enough. I think we have enough uh, sample from Rachin Ravindra both in white ball and now he's showing in red ball cricket. He's a very mature player. I think I was looking at one of the interviews that he gave that he was really prepared for the test matches in Asia this season with the matted pitches and the preparation that goes behind it. He's actually my 12th man, so he's not in my first 11. He just misses out. I still feel he doesn't have the body of work. Maybe after this series it changes because he would have played a couple of more test matches in India. I've gone with Jesse Ryder, forgotten man, all the antics in the world, all the ill discipline, played for RCB, loves his beer, loves his pub fights. But the guy has an amazing record versus India. I remember he scored 160 or something when India toured New Zealand in that defeated series in 2009 when New Zealand lost. But he has a record which is very good in India. Averages around 60 as a 50 plus average versus India. He can bowl as well, even though it's seam up. And I think as a left-handed option, he can whack the ball. So I'm going full intent 5, 6, 7. Jesse Ryder. Some people will have a lot of complaint in this. This is the controversial pick in my team, but I think given his record in India and versus India and the guy for the big occasion, I think Jesse Ryder, backing him all the way. I know you have a very boring pick at 7, but yeah.
I will make a comment on your team. I really like you start off with conservative, then go to intent, and then start thinking some character in your team. I like that.
Yeah, then we decided Latham and Richardson was all the the conservative tuxedo suited guys, and then I wanted to go full whatever denims on.
Anyways, coming to my lower middle order slash all rounder picks, for me, number 7 is Chris Gaines. Although,
Hmm.
a disclaimer, Chris Gaines did not play in India in the 21st century. But growing
Yeah.
up, I was really fond of Chris Gaines as a player, really loved him as a player. Really good bowler who always troubled India with the ball. And also, when it came to it, he also scored some very useful runs for New Zealand. So, love to see him as a player, but then also hated to see him as a competition against India. So, I go with this personal bias and want to have him at number 7 because he did play, like, for the sake of our constraints, he did play for New Zealand in the 21st century. Just not in
Yeah.
India, but then he definitely
Yeah.
had that potential, and I think he'd be a good addition to the team at number 7.
He played in that heartbreaking white ball ICC Champions Trophy final and delivered. He's such a class player, the all-rounder that we all crave for in the 90s and early 2000s that India, we wish that India had had it. Had a difficult after career with all the controversies and all the illnesses. But yeah, I think the only reason why I did not pick him was the fact that you mentioned that he hasn't played that much cricket in the 21st century, and especially versus India in India and all that. Otherwise, he was like a shoe-in for me, and there wouldn't have been Jesse Ryder in my team. But decided, but I will give you the personal bias because it is so good. Chris Gaines, we all love him. We all loved him when we were growing up. So that's your 7. Now we come to the bowling. 8, 9, 10, 11. First the spinners, then the pacers. Take it away.
So the first spinner is again a no-brainer. The best spinner that New Zealand has produced in the 21st century, and who can also bat for me, Daniel Vettori. You got to have him in the team when you're touring India. You want to have a spinner who can. I mean, Daniel Vettori, for whatever it's worth, it is the best spinner in the sport. Plus a very handy batter. So I have him at 8. A close miss for me is Mitch Santner because he again gives
Mhm.
the same thing which Vettori gives you. Plus, he again is not playing a lot of Test cricket of late. For me, the second spinner would be Ajaz Patel. Again, because there are so few options to pick from. We have Ish Sohi, we have Jeetan Patel, and Tarun Nethula. I think Ajaz Patel, given his record in Asia, he also picked up 10 wickets in an innings the last time he came to India. So I'd go ahead with Ajaz Patel. Who are your spinners assess?
Yeah, I think we highlighted even the principles of a good team to succeed in India, and this is where they lack. They not only lack fast spin, but they just lack quality. So even if you have quality spinners, if you are bringing a Nathan Lyon, you are bringing a Danish Kaneria, you can succeed in India, and you do succeed in India. You win a test match here and there. But you just don't have spinners to pick from in New Zealand throughout their history. Daniel Vittori is a really accomplished cricketer, great thinking man, has had a good record. But if I have to put hand on my heart, he doesn't have that exceptional of a record if you look at it in totality. But he's the best pick. His experience, he can bat. You have to pick him, so I picked him as well. Vittori at number 8, extensive batting lineup, very nice option. Second spinner, I also looked at names like Paul Wiseman and Mike Craig, who played early on in the 2000s, still don't have the body of work. Jeetan Patel was for a long time in my 11, but then I had looked at Ajaz Patel picking up wickets of Rohit and Yashasvi yesterday, swayed me a bit, but he has decent record. And if you look at his record in Asia, he has picked like 68 wickets in 14 matches at an average of 30. So that means in Asian conditions, he's just a good bowler. The only con with this approach is that we have two slow left arms, both of us. But it's like you have to pick good bowlers. You worry about variety later on. You have to do the sanity first of picking the best 11 players. So I agree with you. Vittori at 8. Ajaz for me bats at 11, but those he's the worst batter I feel. So, but yeah, these are the two spinners for me. And some spin will come from Williamson. I think in both our teams. I think Williamson and Ross Taylor can both roll their arms over. Williamson a bit more accomplished spinner. So those are the options.
For me, even
Now,
Rachin Ravindra can give me a few overs.
yeah, for you, you have Rachin Ravindra as option. I can't ask Jesse Ryder. Maybe if he's drunk, he can roll his arm over, bowling some leg spin, but I don't think so. Interestingly, we both even did not mention about Ish Sodhi because Ish Sodhi, even though has had a long career, but is he mostly successful with the white ball. So we decided not to go for him. Okay,
So
coming to
yes,
the fast bowlers, slew of fast bowlers to choose from.
a lot of pace bowlers actually, and some real good quality in there as well. We have Shane Bond, Tim Southey, Trent Bolt, Kyle Jamieson, Chris Martin, Neil Wagner, Will O'Rourke, Adam Milne, Matt Henry, Darrell Tuffy, Mark Gillespie.
Wow.
So many bowlers and actually good quality bowlers, right? So you want to see, now that you mentioned about spinners, that first is having good options. The second is that we look at variety. When it comes to pace bowling, I feel we have a lot of good options. So I want some variety in my attack. I already have Chris Gaines who is bowling pace for me. So add on, I want a lefty in Trent Bolt and left-hander bowler, really good with the new ball, really smart, can trouble Indian top order batters with a swinging ball. The second option that I want is Shane Bond. I feel he has always been an X factor, always troubled Indian batters. I still remember that one spell where he took 6 wickets against India, totally rattled us up. So I
Yeah,
definitely want him. And this again also aligns with the one principle that we had discussed: flat pitch,
yeah,
who can
yeah.
actually bounce the ball, pace, and trouble the Indian batters. So that's my bowling attack. What about you?
Yeah, I like your selections. I mean, you have kept principles close to your selections. I mean, for me, I mean, yes, a lot of options. I was looking at mentioned about Chris Martin and that famous spell. He has had a very good record. He was, I think, fourth highest wicket taker for New Zealand, and people just forget him because he was so uh, playing in an era where New Zealand weren't that great. If Shane Bond would have played more, he wouldn't have to command the leadership of the team, of the bowling team. He could have been a very good second pacer or third pacer. Darrell Tuffy, all the success in New Zealand when we went down there. But I went with the classic Bolt and Saudi. Saudi, if you would think that, okay, he's doesn't have the pace, he can swing the ball a bit, may not have a great record. He has a very good record in India in terms of picking wickets. He has high economy rate, strike rate isn't that great either, but he just picked wickets. He has got a 6 for, he's got a 4 for, he will pick wickets here and there. If you give them helpful conditions like they have in Bangalore like this time, he will wreck you through. And he can hit the ball. I mean, if Saudi did not stitch that partnership in this test match, we could have still have made a game out of it. So Saudi for me, expect a lot of wickets as well. And then second was Bolt. I think Bolt left hand has got good pace. He can go 140. So that was a selection left and right. They work very good in tandem, in partnership together. Shane Bond was a close call for me, but again, he doesn't have the body of work, especially in Asia and India. He's played only 2 test matches in Lanka, never played in India a test match, but a mind-blowing record. 18 test matches, 87 wickets, average of 22, strike rate of 38. That is too good to ignore. So I will give that to UAB. That was a good selection. But I felt in a 5-match test series in India, he would break down. He would just break down. Maybe New Zealand goes 1-0 up with him, but I felt I'll just go with the tested war horses, Bolt and Saudi.
And they also bowl so well in tandem. For me, Saudi was a close miss, and the only reason why I didn't pick him was because I already have Chris Gaines in my lineup, and I think Chris Gaines is a better batter. But then you never know with Saudi, he gave you that critical 60 odd runs in this particular
Yeah,
match.
he can hit. He can smack some sixes, take the bowlers off the length. I was happy with Ryder bowling few more overs and Astle maybe chipping in. But yeah, you have Chris Gaines coming in. But I was also trying to be more closer to the principle of 21st century and players who have played in India. I think I wanted that experience in the team, and Saudi and Bolt would cover up that with the extreme pace that Bond had. So I'm happy with my 2 pacers.
So now that we have our 11, who is your coach and captain?
Yeah, my captain is Stephen Fleming, as I mentioned, of all the experience, the CSK experience, and the calmest man, the coolest man, never sweats. So Stephen Fleming has got good leadership group in this team. Latham, Williamson, Vettori, Saudi as well. So happy with, and he will be well respected in this team. So Fleming is the captain. Already mentioned you about Rachin Ravindra being my 12th man. Concussion substitute. That works out. And then Mike Hesson as my coach. He coached, I think, for a long time. Took them to the 2015 finals as well in ODI. Made good strides in Test cricket as well. Built this team that was able to win the WTC. Well traveled, knows a lot about Indian conditions because of all the IPL experience. So Hesson and Fleming for me.
That's a solid pick, SS. And in fact, I also go on the same lines, but instead of Stephen Fleming, I go ahead with Brendan McCullum as my captain. One of the reasons is because I definitely want Hesson as my coach, and the combination of Hesson and McCullum is
You're looking for Ben Stokes and Baz Ball, some kind of in Hesson and Baz.
exactly like from my picks. You know that I want all intent in my team because I feel you really got to be on top when you're touring India. That's the only way to win. Also, I definitely want that combination up top. Stephen Fleming, of course, a very difficult choice not to make him a captain because he has probably captained New Zealand in the most number of tests, right? If I'm not wrong. And for me, he's like the big brother in the team, the leader of the leadership group. But then I would want to go ahead with McCullum as the captain and Mike Hesson as the coach. For me, number 12 would be Tim Southee for all
Tim
that he
Southee.
brings to the table.
Smart. All right, then. That means we have announced our 11 and all the auxiliary picks. So, AB, for the listeners and viewers, a quick summary.
So my 11 starts with Tom Latham opening, along with Brendan McCullum. Number 3 would be Fleming, followed by Kane Williamson. Middle order, I'd have Nathan Astle at 5, Rachin Ravindra at 6, Chris Gaines at 7, Dan Vettori at 8. So this is where my batting depth is still. After that, I have my 3 bowlers, Ajaz Patel, Shane Bond, and Trent Bolt. That's my 11. What's your 11 SS?
Tom Latham for me, alongside Mark Richardson as the opener. Williamson at 3 in his classical position. Fleming as my captain at 4. Nathan Astle at 5. Baz McCullum at 6. Jesse Ryder as my bingo pick at 7. Daniel Vettori at 8. Tim Southee, 9 with all the hoiks. Number 10, Trent Bolt. 11, Ajaz Patel. Rachin Ravindra as my 12th man. And Hesson as both our coaches of this team. Prediction: 5 Test match series in India.
I would say India wins, but this time 3-2. Maybe New Zealand can even draw with 2-2, with one match being drawn. But I genuinely feel this is a fairly good New Zealand 11. The only principle that we could not cover was having fast spin, but still there's a lot of quality in that Test 11, and we have some really strong batters, right? Counter whatever is missing in the bowling side, and plus whenever the conditions favor, we have some really, really good quicks. Chris Gaines, Shane Bond, Trent Bolt, real good quality there.
Yeah.
I would say 2 or 2-2. What's your prediction?
Okay. Yeah, I'm a bit pessimistic because I think you have got good picks based on how they've performed worldwide, Bond and Gaines. I do not have that in my team. And I also feel that apart from the spin, my team is still not covering, let's say, the pace element of it. I would have loved to also have some bounce, as we saw O'Rourke doing so well. Kyle Jamieson picked a few wickets last time they were here. So if that was something that we would have factored in, maybe it would have. So I am going with a little pessimistic 3-1. But you never know. This Indian team is now aging. Ashwin is not young anymore. The top order will not be as consistent. So the series is happening now. Maybe it would be 3-2, but I think 3-1 India wins this. All right, guys. That's a wrap for today's episode of the River Sweep Show. Hope you guys like this episode when we publish. We publish every week. You can find us on all streaming platforms, Apple and Spotify included. We'll soon be on YouTube as well. So thank you all for tuning in. Till next week. Bye-bye and take care.